If you ask most people what a chef does, they'll give you one answer: restaurant, service, kitchen. But the reality is, some of the most interesting chefs today don't work in restaurants at all. And no one tells you that when you start. You are listening to Fugitive Chefs, a podcast about what happens when chefs step outside the traditional kitchen path. I'm Furkan, I've worked in kitchens like Noma and Mugaritz, and today I work outside restaurants as a senior innovation chef at Kraft Heinz. And this episode is something I wish someone had told me much earlier. So, when we enter this industry, we are given one story: go to a culinary school, then go to a restaurant, become a head chef at that restaurant, possibly at some point own your place or multiple places. And that's it. And that problem over here that I see isn't that the path is wrong, it is that it's incomplete. Because what you don't see is everything that is happening outside the path. You don't see chefs working in product development. You don't see chefs shaping what millions of people eat every day. You don't see chefs that are running private businesses. You don't see chefs that are doing catering clubs. You don't see chefs building media, communities, education platforms. And you also don't see chefs who are working in schools, hospitals, catering, large systems. And because you don't see it, you don't consider it. And this is where things started to change for me. Through this podcast, I've spoken to chefs who are feeding thousands of students every day, like Chef Kevin Jenkins or Dan Giusti, running one-person businesses, doing private dining like Sorme, building communities for chefs outside kitchens, working inside companies, shaping food at scale like myself. And what's interesting is none of them followed the expected path, but all of them are doing very meaningful work within food. And this matters more than it seems, because when you only see one path, you judge your entire career against it. So if you don't want a restaurant, you feel lost. You feel like, okay, why do I not want it? Why do I not want to do something that was so bloody logical when I started in this path? If you don't fit into the culture in the kitchen, you feel like you're failing. You feel like you have to be that, you have to imbibe that culture. You have to be that person. And the reality I would say is that you're not failing. You were just never shown the full map because you're just judging yourself by what you know, right? So for me, this shift did not really come from burnout. A lot of people say that burnout happens, or I have kids, I have family, and that changes the scenario for me. For me, none of those things happened. For me, it happened from exposure, from seeing that there were people doing things differently and realizing that being a chef doesn't have to look one specific way. For example, I've recently started a Substack and I wrote the story over there of how I saw this job, the job before this at Basque Culinary Center, and I thought there's no way that job is for me. When I saw the description, when I saw what they ask for, when I saw what kind of projects they do, I would like, but why would they want somebody like me? Why would I fit in there? And for me, that came from exposure to first, yes, knowing that these things exist and that is the job I am doing for you. So if in your environment there is nobody else who's a chef and doesn't serve guests, let's keep it to that. Let's keep it to chefs serving guests. Because if I say restaurants, I mean, today you can also be a chef in a dark kitchen, you could be fulfilling delivery orders, which I think is a legit, very smart, genius business, which is future proof for like things like COVID or things like that. But let's say you do not know any chef who's not working for a direct guest or a direct customer. I play that role for you. So I'm helping you skip that first part of exposure. So if any exposure you do not have, now you don't have the excuse for it. If you've reached this podcast, if you've seen the library, I have over 65 episodes now, and it's chefs of all sorts. And they're all not working in restaurant kitchens or kitchens facing guests. But so that's the first part, I would say, exposure. Second is talking to these people. Because again, for me in the Substack I've shared, if you've not seen it, I'll try to put the link in the description. I can't promise because I'm recording this 2 weeks before this will go live. So I'll try that. But in that Substack, I've clearly mentioned how my path worked, so maybe it inspires you to possibly draw some similar line for yourself. For me, it happened by first exposure because in Mugaritz, I had an R&D department and we had chefs working in the R&D department and not really serving clients. They were doing their own things, possibly doing events for the restaurant, doing menu for the new season coming up, doing dietaries, creating also like seasonal, because Mugaritz, again, for somebody who doesn't know, it's a restaurant which works 6 months a year, has a menu for 6 months. For the rest of them, they're doing R&Ds or opening doing more like, I would say, events all around the world, opening restaurants from the same group, helping other businesses so to build the restaurant group. But Mugaritz itself works for 6 months. So during the months, I mean, there will be a month where you suddenly have Magnolia, for example. Those who live in Europe, we had a massive season of Magnolia, right? So there is an R&D chef. Harvey, for example, he'll come up with a dish which highlights Magnolia because the daily chefs in the restaurant do not have time for that. So he'll make a frozen Magnolia with an oyster and a champagne, how do you say, a granita with it. So things like that I was exposed to, and I said, okay, these guys are working in the same restaurant, but they're not serving guests. They are still chefs. So that was my exposure part. The second part was when I had to leave Noma. I was like, okay, I still want to work in food, but not really in restaurants. And I reached out to one of those R&D chefs, Fran. I've mentioned her in the Substack as well, and she shed light onto this path. So I would say yes, first get that exposure through this podcast or wherever that is, and second, very important part is reach out to those people. Reach out because that's where the quality of conversation improves, and it's not just you listening, but helping this person mentor you to build that path. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're starting to question your path, that's exactly why I built Fugitive Chefs Circle. Let me do this little segue to explain you what the Fugitive Chefs Circle is. It's a small community where chefs are figuring exactly these questions out together. They are having conversations and exploring what else is possible. We do mainly meetups. There's a WhatsApp group, and it's honestly one of the most valuable parts of this whole project. But we also do working sessions. We have people who have ideas for businesses, or possibly they are restaurant consultants and they have a doubt. Like today, we had a person who had a doubt about doing a very Basque dish, bacalao pilpil, in a restaurant. And she wants to figure out how can you serve that very technical dish in a fast-paced restaurant. So it's people creating working groups within that to help create this community for themselves, because most of these paths are unique and there's no really playbook to go about it. So which is why I created the community. So if you have not yet joined it, it's a pity. So please go check it out. Check out fugitivechefs.com, just like the name of the podcast, ending with a .com, and go to the website. You'll see a link to join the community. Anyways, so maybe I would say the better question isn't should I stay in kitchens or leave. That is not what this podcast is about, because I guess you have reached that question yourself. But the question I would say is, what does being a chef actually mean to me in your case? Because today a chef can be a creator, a builder, a researcher, like my previous role, an educator, an entrepreneur, which I think is a very legit, valid path, which lets you, I think it gives you the most freedom. The freedom comes with the cost, of course, of being a business holder. But that's a path as well, entrepreneurship. But none of these make you less of a chef. And that's exactly the whole vision of the podcast. I keep repeating, it's called Fugitive Chefs for a reason, because I want to stretch the definition of what being a chef means. And this is what I want you to relate with, that none of these paths make you less of a chef. If you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Start expanding your view before making decisions. Talk to people, as I said, explore different paths, do like these. Do these gigs that could be this, like some sort of exploration. For example, if you want to do a catering business, a massive catering business, do your friend's birthday party, do your mother's friend who wants to host a party for somebody, do things for them, host a supper club. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go to your local flea market, put up a product, whether it's a preserve, whether it is, I don't know, some sort of chips, whether it's a protein bar, whatever that is. It's not about the product. It's about getting yourself to break that mold of what you're doing in your everyday. Try that out. So before making the big plunge, talk to people, explore different paths by these small gigs that I mentioned. If you need advice on that, of what that small gig could be for you, reach out to me. This is no massive podcast for now. I hope it becomes someday. But for now, you can always reach out to me and write to me and ask me these questions, and I'll be more than happy to help. Understand what actually exists in your environment, because I know the listeners over here come from all over the world. I keep seeing the statistics on Spotify and being more than surprised how widespread the reach is. So understand what is your environment and what exists in your environment, because the biggest limitation right now, it's not opportunity, it's visibility. You're not seeing the options that exist. There is no one way to be a chef. There never was. Honestly, since the beginning of time, there's been many ways to be a chef. We were just shown one version because at some point this one version became the most mainstream and got a little, inflated. But once you see beyond it, you can't unsee it. It becomes so obvious. Like, honestly, now, this was not part of the plan of the script that I have in front of me, but another segue in the series of segues in this episode. I started this podcast. It was called something else, what called Boy Atras. I don't know how many of you follow from back then, but it was a Spanish name. Funny stories. Boy Atras means hot behind, or behind you, technically. Hot behind in the sense of the kitchen word you use to pass around a kitchen, to not run into somebody or hit somebody with something warm, hot, whatever. So that was the name, but it also literally means you're going behind. So in my head, it was, I'm going behind the stories of chefs that we all know who have written like 10,000 interviews, all with the same stories, the Hestons and the Renes and Andonis of the world. I wanted the stories of people who are not in this limelight and doing something very creative, which is being a chef outside restaurants. And back then when I started, the episodes were 1 week Spanish, 1 week English. And I thought maximum I would go for like half a year, and half a year is like 25 episodes. I was still scared, and I had half English, half Spanish. So I was like, big deal. I'd find 13 English and 13 Spanish stories, and I have a 6-month podcast, and it's whatever money I'm investing into it. This mic is from back then. The recorder is from back then, from 4 years ago now. So I thought, I will run out of stories. But honestly, as I was saying before, going in the segue, that once you see beyond the classic idea of chef, you cannot unsee it. I keep finding stories. I still have like a whole Notion list of around, I can see on the other screen, around 35 more guests right now who I have reached out on LinkedIn, and they are, as we speak, scheduling to be on the podcast. So honestly, the stories are a lot. There's a lot of people doing very creative, unique stuff. So dare to dream, dare to get out of your bubble, dare to get out of this classic definition of being a chef, and see what else is out there. If this episode made you think slightly differently, share it with someone who might need to hear this, because a lot of chefs are asking these questions quietly, because it's a little uncomfortable, right? To deny the identity that we were told is being a chef. So the more we talk about it, the clearer things become. I'll see you in the next episode. Please like, follow, subscribe, rate, review, whichever platform you're listening this on. Do that, because this really helps the episode and the podcast itself reach more people. Thanks once again.